Hello, hope everybody's doing okay tonight. This video is going to make a needed adjustment to mainstream astrotheology that most of you are probably familiar with. But the real esoteric astrotheology and the understanding of the cosmos and its structure is slightly different than what you may have heard. And it's all based off of the human body. Kabbalah has done a very good job of showing us actually the way that it's structured. And believe it or not, yes, it is actually anthropomorphized as well, slightly. And we're going to see this in the symbolism that we're going to get into. The first thing I want to go over is an understanding of the first begotten. The first begotten in the Bible is got some certain things after it. And we see that Jesus is called the first begotten. But we also know that Adam is the first begotten too. And through everything, through him, the universe was formed. What we have over history is we have these names, such as Christ, such as Adam, Kadmon, the first begotten, Anthropos, the divine mind. All of these things, these are all referencing the same thing. It's also the same thing that the vision of Hermes was speaking of as well. So when you imagine the cosmos, you have to imagine things as coming in through the cosmos and then creating this large man. Well, the first thing that comes into existence in the cosmos is the pineal gland of this large man. It's the head that comes into being first. And this is what is also stated in Kabbalah. Let's take a look at what the first begotten, what we have, some of the things on that the Bible has on this for us. And this is from the links here in this first begotten area. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. Now let's take a look at something in Kabbalah real quick that we read from Manly Hall the other day. And this is pretty much common knowledge as far as Kabbalah goes. Remember, the first 5 books of the Bible, that's the Torah. That belongs to the Jews, that belongs to the Kabbalists. This does not belong to the Catholic Church. So I'll read this again for you guys here. 4 Kabbalistic trees described in the preceding chapter were combined by latest Jewish scholars into one all-inclusive diagram termed by them not only the Sephirothic, but also the archetypal or heavenly Adam. According to some authorities, it is the heavenly Adam and not a terrestrial man whose creation is described in the opening chapters of Genesis. Out of the substances of this divine man, the universe was formed. In him it remains and will continue after dissolution shall resolve spheres back into their own primitive substance. If you want to know why Michelangelo painted the creation of Adam, or the heavenly Adam, what he did was he painted the first Sephira. And the first Sephira is associated with the pineal gland. So right here, it's speaking of Adam Kadmon right here, the heavenly or celestial Adam. And what it's saying is that Kether is the crown of the prototypic head, and perhaps refers to the pineal gland. Chokmah and Bina are the right and left hemispheres, respectively, of the great brain. They call it a brain for a reason, because the geometry shows that it is a brain in right profile, exactly like the Ancient of Days is described. So this is the first logos that was created. And this logos is actually manifested. We even see the same geometry on Earth, but I'm not going to go into that on this particular video. I just want to show you the structure. And I'm going to show you some symbolism we can find from Athanasius Kircher, astrology clocks, and everything. So we see that the Son is the image of the invisible God, firstborn over all creation. What else do I have here? For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. Okay, so that's the same thing that we read in Kabbalah, but now let's cross-reference this. The Gospel of the Egyptians. And then there came forth from that place the cloud of the great light, the living power, the mother of the holy incorruptible ones, the great power, the Merotho. And she gave birth to him, whose name I say 3 times. For this one, Adamas, is a light which radiated from the light. He is the eye of the light, for this is the first man, the firstborn. He through whom and to whom everything came into being, without whom nothing came into being. And the great Logos, the divine autogenes, and the incorruptible man, Adamas, mingled with each other. A Logos of man came into being. However, the man came into being through a word. This is from the divine Poimander from Hermes, Trismegistus. This is the vision of Hermes. And right here, the mind is speaking of the way things started. That light, he said, am I, thy God, mind, prior to moist nature which appeared from darkness. The light word, the Logos, that appeared from mind is the Son of God. And the Son of God is in the image of God, and God is mind. So we have the Son of the mind. And so therefore, the first thing out of the infinite, which is the black hole, is the Logos, which represents the mind. It represents Manus, the mind thinker. So we have that first Logos coming into being at the very top. So I don't know if I have anything else here. One more from him. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn among the dead, so that in everything he might have supremacy. Down here in King James, he's the head of the body, the church. Not the church that you go to, the temple which is the body. He is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have the preeminence. So, once again, we see the Son of God right here is referencing Adam, but Adam is the same thing as Christ that we're going to see. Christ is the firstborn out of the infinite. It's the Son of God. Here's another one. And we have several of this is majesty on high, but I want to read this one up here. It says, that he says, who being the brightness of his glory and express image of his person, and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he had himself purged our sins, sat down on the right hand of the majesty on high. It also says right here, when he had cleansed us from our sins, he sat down in the place of honor at the right hand of the majestic God in heaven. So what it's referring to is referring to the first Logos that comes out of the black hole, which is the central spiritual sun. And that's important. There are 2 suns when we take a look at the tree of life. There's a sun in our solar system, and then there is the central sun that all the stars move around in a particular cosmos, our particular cosmos. So all of our planets, and they're all controlled. They're all moving around a central sun, but the central sun that they're moving around is not the center of the galaxy. It is actually a smaller one, which is the Orion Nebula, and this is what Michelangelo was referring to. So let me show you some graphics real quick. Okay, so right here, this is from Isis Unveiled, and she goes across culture here. The ancient sun worshippers regarded the Great Spirit as a nature god identified with nature, and the sun as the deity, in whom the Lord of life dwells. Gamma is the sun according to the Hindu theology. The sun is the source of the souls and all of life. Agni, the divine fire, the deity of the Hindu, is the sun, for the fire and the sun are the same. Ormast is the light, the sun god, or the life giver, in Hindu philosophy. The souls issue from the soul of the world and return to it as sparks of fire. But in another place it is said that the sun is the soul of all things, which all is proceeded out of it, we've heard that before, and will return to it, which shows that the sun is meant allegorically here and refers to the central invisible sun, whose first manifestation was Sephra, the emanation of En Sof, light in short. And then here's a quote from the Bible, "And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north," the head area. "A great cloud and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it," Ezekiel said. This is the throne right here, and this represents the pineal gland, and the geometry is actually the same as the area surrounding the pineal gland. So, first coming out of the infinite, we have this cloud that's created, and a fire enfolding itself. This represents the first Sephra, and that's what this represents right here as well. This is showing the first Sephra coming into being through a word. And this is the reason why that the pyramids were built the way that they are. The peculiar architecture of the pyramids shows in itself the drift of the metaphysical thought of their builders. The apex, which is the capstone area, is lost in the clear blue sky of the land of the pharaohs and typifies the primordial point. And that primordial point is Kether. That's the first point that came into this universe where a pillar arose, and then stars came out of this thing. And that's the reason why we see all of the stars in the Orion constellation the way that we do, with all of their age and distance from the Earth, making a smooth line to the Orion Nebula, and seeing a spiral coming out of it, just like we see in the center of a galaxy. Same thing. So the shape of the pyramids and the angles of the pyramid match the same angles that we see right here as well. Also, if we look in the Bible, it says, "I have set a tent in the sky for the sun." And so what this represents, the pyramid, the very top, and this eye that you see right here, is the same as the eye. Remember Adam, the eye of light? So the first Sephra that came out of this right here. This is where things began for us. Now let's break this down a little bit more. This is showing the zodiac. And what do you see right in the center of this zodiac? This is the winged disc that sits in the very center of it. It's representing the central sun. Athanasius Kircher did this drawing a long time ago in the 1600s. So the thing that needs to be changed is, it's not our sun that's the center of the zodiac. It is the central sun. And the central sun is the same representation that we see right here. This is the reason why on the tree of life you always see this guy right here. The reason why this fits the way that it does is because it's meant to work with the human body. You see where he's got his wand right here. That represents the area associated with the heart. You see these two holes at the bottom of this thing? That represents the two holes that sit right at the bottom inside your pelvis. And when you move right up, and you can see that everything as far as the body moves right in line with the tree because it's associated with the body. And what do we see right here? We see the winged disc representing the central sun, which represents the mind, the first thing born out of the infinite. So we go back to our other diagram here. We see the same tree of life here, and you have the winged disc sitting at the top, which is the first thing out of the infinite, which created the stars. Job 9:9, he creates the stars, the Orion, the Pleiades, the constellations of the southern sky. So out of the substances of him the universe was formed. You see, all of this is still the same thing. Now, take a look at the tree of life right here, and take a look at the drawings by Athanasius Kircher. You see the first Sephra? You see the ray coming out, reflecting off the sun and down to earth? You see the same thing right here. From here, the first Sephirah, going to the sun and down to earth, which is the root, which is Malkuth, the kingdom. And the reason why we see that the Orion Nebula actually has an imprint on the earth, like I've shown you many times before, is because in Kabbalah it specifically says that that you actually will see the shadow of Kether on Malkuth. And this is the same thing that Hermes Trismegistus told us as well. Newman Triform right here, which is in the very center of this thing, is translated to God triple, but I believe triple means Trinity. So that's the Trinity, which represents this area right up here. This is the crown. So down here you have the sun, which represents the heart. We have the zodiac right here, and we have 12 of them. And it's very possible that those could be related to the cranial nerves in the brain. Not really sure. But you can see how this whole thing is associated with the human body. And the ancients knew this a long time ago. Over here, you see the first Sephirah again. You see the triangle coming off the sun. And I think what you're going to find eventually is I think we're going to find that the Orion Nebula somehow modulates or controls the activity of our sun in some way. I think we're going to find that out eventually. Down here is the geometry that I've shown you many times that shows you the winged disk. The same geometry that we see in the Orion Nebula is the same geometry that we see on the winged disk, and I've even gone into high detail with this for you. But this is the same thing as what we see as the central sun right here. Now also, as far as the zodiac goes, let's take a look, because there's an astrology clock. And you can find these all over the place. And what do you see right in the middle of the 12 apostles, which are really the signs of the zodiac? You see Christ, which represents the central spiritual sun. So the thing to get out of all of this is Kabbalah is correct, the symbolism is correct, but even more so, Christ or Jesus does not represent the sun in our solar system. The sun in our solar system is only an emblem of the spiritual central sun, which all of the ancients were pointing us to, which represents the same thing as Christ, which represents the same thing as Adam. And if you do any searches on the internet, you will find that there are direct associations to Adam and Christ, because we see that Adam is the firstborn out of the infinite. And so this is what the ancients were pointing us to. This is the reason why we see Michelangelo painted the Orion Nebula the way that he did. And just to show you this. And it's also the reason why I was right about this as far as the brain goes. Because the Ancient of Days in Kabbalah describes a person in right profile. But the only reason I was able to get that was because I knew that he painted the Orion Nebula, and I knew that he painted a brain. So, and then we see right here that he definitely painted that. So you can see how all this confirms itself. These are images showing the Orion Nebula and Earth as well, showing Kether and showing Malkuth right next to each other, and the shadow that exists, just like the ancients knew about as well. So anyways, so I hope you enjoyed that, because this is the true structure of what we should be looking at when we think of astrology. It's not all of the zodiac moving around our sun. It's moving around the central sun. And it just so happens that the Orion Nebula and our sun are both in the Orion arm, about 1,300 light years away from each other, but close enough to each other to where relatively they're still both in the center, but it's the central sun that all the zodiac is moving around, because it represents the head. We have the zodiac, and then we go through the planets of the solar system from our sun down to Earth, and we can see that there is a ray that goes straight down the middle pillar from Kether through the sun to Earth. And this is the way that it's structured. This is the atom Kadmon. You guys have a great night, and I'll talk to you soon.